The AI revolution you've been sold is not what you think. Behind trillion-dollar valuations is an invisible global workforce training the system for pennies. But that system is already breaking. Now, tech giants are forcing AI to train on its own synthetic data. What happens when a machine built to learn from reality loses reality altogether? Close your eyes and picture the artificial intelligence revolution. What do you see? Chances are you're picturing gleaming server farms in Silicon Valley, rows upon rows of blinking lights humming with infinite processing power. You imagine a self-teaching, hyper-advanced digital brain evolving in a pristine, untouched void. That is the illusion you've been sold. The reality is something entirely different. Today's AI revolution doesn't run on pure mathematics or digital magic. It is held together by a massive, invisible, and sweating human supply chain. It is built on the backs of millions of minimum wage workers in Kenya, India, and the Philippines, staring at screens, manually tagging the internet so the algorithm doesn't embarrass its creators. We are not looking at a purely technological marvel. We are looking at a digital sweatshop. And right now, the sheer cost of this human bottleneck is pushing the entire AI economy to the brink of collapse. Let's look at the actual mechanics of the system. Let's look at the math. When OpenAI was building ChatGPT, they needed to make it safe. They needed to teach it the difference between a helpful recipe and a bomb-making manual. To do this, they didn't just write better code. They outsourced the problem. Through a subcontractor called Sama, they hired workers in Kenya to read and label some of the most toxic, traumatic, and disturbing content on the internet. Their compensation for building the guardrails of the world's most famous AI? Between $1.32 and $2 an hour. Meanwhile, back in San Francisco, the AI engineer designing the architecture of that same system earns an average of $68 to $77 an hour, pulling in anywhere from $141,000 to $161,000 a year. This isn't just a story about global inequality. As an analyst, when I look at a wage arbitrage this extreme, I don't just see a moral dilemma. I see a glaring system vulnerability. I see a business model that is entirely dependent on the continuous exploitation of cheap labor. But here is the breaking point. The models are getting too big, and even cheap human labor is becoming too expensive. The human data bubble is about to burst. And the market already knows it. If you want proof, look at the money. Look at Appen. For years, Appen was the traditional giant of the data labeling industry, relying on a vast army of human workers. Today, their global revenues have suffered a dramatic 37% crash. By 2025, the company posted a net loss of $21.8 million. Big Tech is actively canceling their old-school, human-centric labeling contract. Now, contrast that with Scale AI, a company that saw the bottleneck coming and pivoted hard toward automated and synthetic processes, securing massive Pentagon contracts and deep AI integration. In 2024, Scale AI hit $1.5 billion in revenue. By 2025, fueled by strategic investments from Meta, their valuation skyrocketed to a staggering $29 billion. The companies selling human sweat are being erased from the board. The companies building the automated alternative are becoming empires. To understand why this shift is inevitable, we have to look under the hood. We have to understand how the machine actually learns. Let's strip away the marketing jargon. Let's talk about a concept called RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback. People think AI knows things. It doesn't. A large language model is simply a hyper-advanced predictive text engine. It guesses the next word based on probability. But to make it sound intelligent, to make it helpful rather than chaotic, it needs to be trained on what a good answer looks like. That is where RLHF comes in. The model generates two answers. A human looks at them, chooses the better one, and clicks a button. That preference is fed back into the system. The machine isn't learning facts. It is mathematically mimicking human preferences. Now, zoom out and look at the logistics of this operation. Imagine a single piece of data leaving a high-rise in San Francisco, traveling through fiber optic cables, and landing on a monitor in a crowded room in Nairobi. A human worker manually reviews it, labels it safe or dangerous, and sends it back to the algorithm. This is not software engineering. This is a global logistics and labor management crisis. And the unit economics are terrifying. Depending on the complexity of the task, human data labeling costs between 50 cents and $5 per single action. Let's do the math on a basic scale. If you are training a standard computer vision model and you need 100,000 labeled images, that simple data set will cost you up to $500,000. Now scale that up to the new generation of large language models, models with trillions of parameters. The math breaks. Relying on human labeling at this scale isn't just expensive, it is an unscalable economic death sentence. Tech giants have hit a wall. They have devoured almost all the high-quality human data available on the internet, and paying humans to create more is bleeding them dry. So, what is the solution? How do you feed a beast that has run out of food? You make the beast feed itself. Welcome to the era of synthetic data. This isn't just a cost-cutting measure. It is a fundamental technological leap. We are entering a phase where AI models generate their own data to train other AI models. And if you think a machine can't teach another machine better than a human can, the data says otherwise. Look at Google's recent magnet research. They tested this exact premise. They used synthetic data, data generated by machines for machines, to train smaller student AI models. The results were definitive. The models trained on synthetic data actually outperformed the models trained on real human data. Human input is no longer the gold standard. The training wheels are coming off. The machine is now self-sustaining. We are standing at the edge of a $1 trillion pivot. Because tech giants have hit the limit of human data, they are pouring unimaginable wealth into the infrastructure of synthetic generation. In 2024, global venture capital investment into the generative AI sector nearly doubled, hitting an astonishing $45 billion. Capital flows to the path of least resistance. Startups building the architecture for synthetic data, like Gretel, are raising $65.5 million in single funding rounds. The projections are clear. The synthetic data generation market is expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 61.1% straight through to 2029. We are looking at a multi-billion-dollar explosion. In this new paradigm, there will be massive winners and devastating losses. The first casualties are already clear. The millions of workers in the data colonies of the global south. The very people who built the foundation of this technology will be priced out and discarded. Their labor is no longer required. But removing the human from the loop introduces a global, systemic risk that few are prepared for. What happens when an AI is trained on data created by an AI, which was trained on data created by an AI? You get a phenomenon known as model collapse. This isn't science fiction. It is a mathematical certainty documented in peer-reviewed research. According to groundbreaking simulations by Shumailov and his team, published in Nature and Archive, the curse of recursion is real. When you train AI models repeatedly on synthetic data generated by other models, the system begins to degrade. In every new generation, the model forgets the minority data. It loses the natural variance and chaos of true human reality. In the first few generations, you barely notice it, but as the cycle repeats, the errors compound. The model starts producing uniform, fabricated nonsense, hallucinations. It becomes an echo chamber of its own flawed logic. Without the messy, expensive, slow anchor of human reality, the AI spirals. It becomes functionally useless. It goes irreversibly insane within its own closed loop. This is the ultimate paradox of the AI revolution. To scale the system, we have to remove the human. But the moment we remove the human, the system begins to destroy itself. The question is no longer when artificial intelligence will surpass us. The question is how long it can survive without us.